Hello, welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside the one and only Tyler. Do you like how I introduced you?
It's glorious. It's fantastic. I get a lot more credit than I deserve in that intro.
No, I could not give you enough credit. Tyler Keefe alongside me here on the Oakland County Megacast. I really don't think people remotely understand what it takes to get the show on each and every day and what you do behind the scenes. You're like a master.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I wouldn't go that far, but I do appreciate the sentiment nonetheless.
Nope. I think anyone who knows me knows that I'm kind of a no BS person and I don't lie. So I speak the truth, and the truth is Tyler is a master, and each and every day we appreciate you and everything that you do, not just here for the Oakland County Megacast, but also Civic Center TV. He is here often late into the evening, long after I've left. He is still here making sure that you have access to all the important meetings that you need to see as well. Any meetings last night?
Last night the West Bloomfield Township Environmental Commission met. That will replay on Civic Center TV at 1 o'clock today, and it's already available online on demand. Tonight we have the Keagle Harbor City Council meeting.
See? You don't have to leave your house. All you have to do is log on to civiccentertv.com, and you can watch those exciting meetings. If anything, sometimes people don't like to leave their house right now, or even before a pandemic. Were you really going to spend your evening going up to sit in on the environmental meeting if you didn't have an issue with something? You would probably ignore it, but this, having access to it, it's easy to throw it on in the background, kind of dip in, dip out, and pay attention to what's going on in your local community.
And it's great, too, because with a lot of these meetings being in the virtual realm now, over Zoom or over GoToMeeting or whatever the platform may be, you could be watching a meeting, have a question about an item that comes up, and then pop into the Zoom meeting that's always available to the public and ask your council members, your township board, whatever the case may be, the commissioners, a question about the issue that they're covering.
So one of the things I think we've all learned during this pandemic is that our elected leaders, local, state, federal, really matter, because we're turning to them to lead us through this crisis. So be informed. At the end of the day, it's our tax dollars. Yep. We pay their salaries. They answer to us. So be informed, and you can do that through Civic Center TV. And the reason why you can do that is because of the master sitting next to me, Tyler.
Thank you.
So let's move on from that. Glad to have everyone here. Just so everyone knows, as I said, we are the Oakland County Megacast, and this started out of the spirit of this crisis that started way back in March, and trying to keep everyone informed, because the information 5 months into this pandemic is still changing every single day. We're learning new things about the virus that's changing how we operate and how we live. And it's kind of hard staying on top of all that information. So we've come together, put everything in one place. You don't need to search other websites. You don't need to do all of that. Let's make it quick. Let's make it easy. Your time is valuable. Go to civiccentertv.com. If you live here in Oakland County, that's where you can get the information. And also every single day before we come on the air, we try to update the headlines, what happened overnight or late yesterday. Maybe you missed it, and so you can find that under coronavirus. Just click on that, and then you will see the headlines. And we're going to go through those for you real quickly, just so that you can start your day with a little bit of knowledge. You know, before we used to get this information at the water cooler in the office. We don't have a water cooler in the office any longer. Even if you are going to the office, chances are the water cooler is off limits now. Drinking fountains are off limits. So go ahead, grab your cup of coffee. I always start my day with water with a shot of apple cider vinegar, lemon, and basil from my garden.
Nice.
Which, Tyler, is amazing, is still alive right now. So let's go ahead and get through the headlines for you. If you go to civiccentertv.com, Governor is to review reopening of the still closed businesses. So Governor Gretchen Whitmer, this has really been a big issue, is working with the Department of Health and Human Services to reevaluate policies that have kept some Michigan businesses closed nearly 5 months after she initially ordered a stay-at-home mandate. Among the businesses still closed in the lower regions of Michigan, bowling alleys, fitness centers, and movie theaters. An announcement on her decision could come as soon as next week. Tyler, your thoughts? You think they're going to reopen?
I think it's time to review these, especially with a lot of these businesses having brought proposals to the state that have said, here's how we plan on putting measures in place to severely limit our business so that we can be open, but also keep the public safe. We're going to require masks. We're going to mandate social distancing. We're going to modify our hours and have regular cleanings. We may even take days off of operations that we normally wouldn't to do deep cleanings. We heard recently from the Bowling Association who said that they have until September 1st, and if they don't get those leagues back in there playing games, they're going to end up losing a lot of those businesses. So it's getting down to the wire, and I think at this point, with the governor set to review those businesses still being closed, she's definitely getting that information as well.
Well, we're seeing that they have already reopened in some of our neighboring states, such as Ohio, and if they're not seeing spikes, that may play into her decision making as well. Do you think?
Yeah, it might play in. I think, but I think previously, as the governor has stated, she is not entirely focused on what our neighboring states are doing as a benchmark for what we're doing. It's always going to be based on the data and the consultation from the state of Michigan, from the Department of Health and Human Services, in terms of guiding her decision making in these situations.
Our next story on Civic Center TV: power play still underway. In Lansing, Michigan doctors in the power fight say the health emergency ends with a vaccine. A group of Michigan public health experts have advised the State Court of Appeals to uphold Governor Gretchen Whitmer's unilateral powers to combat COVID-19 and says the health emergency presented by the virus will continue until there's a vaccine. A group of doctors filed a brief in June in the ongoing legal fight between the GOP-controlled Michigan legislature and Whitmer over whether her actions violated the separation of powers in government. Michigan Supreme Court has ordered the Court of Appeals to rule by Friday. Why this is so important is because this could set the framework going further. If and when we ever come out of this pandemic, what happens if we go into another one?
Yeah, and Governor Whitmer actually spoke about this yesterday in her press conference from Lansing. We had that live for you here on Lakes FM, and it's on our website on civiccentertv.com/megacast. If you click on watch full interviews, you can see that entire press conference. And she had talked about this. It was actually the last thing she spoke about before she adjourned the press conference. Was the Emergency Powers of the Governor Act of 1945 has played a critical role in her ability to make these quick decisions, and she's vehemently against removing those powers from her office. And she had said that the reason she's so vehemently speaking against it and wants people to deny to sign the petitions against it is so that future governors that are in similar emergency situations can take drastic measures such as she's taken, whether they're Democrat, whether they're Republican, whatever the case may be, and removing the powers of that act from 1945 would drastically reduce the ability for the governor to do that.
We can all hope we don't go through another one of these, but who knows? Also on CivicCenterTV.com, under the coronavirus headline, $65 million in federal funds allocated to help schools. Michigan schools with the most need are now eligible for $60 million in additional federal coronavirus relief funds. Governor Gretchen Whitmer announced Wednesday an additional $5 million will be available for other education entities, including universities, in the ongoing battle to educate students while keeping them safe from the coronavirus. The aid must be used to further the education and well-being of students and staff, and schools and districts that need the money the most are going to be given top priority. And the funds are coming from the Federal CARES Act and are allocated through the Governor's Education Emergency Relief Fund. We are, a week, 2 weeks out from school, and we're still just settling this. So let's hope. We know government doesn't typically move like that. So these schools that need this, the money can go for maybe hot spots for the kids that don't have internet access or Chromebooks, computers, things of that nature. For a lot of these school districts, this money is desperately needed right now.
It is, and better late than never, I would say, but it's got to be frustrating for schools to have been asking and needing and stating their need for this kind of funding for such a long time, and for it to have waited so long. But it is going to those critical services like access to technology for those that are at a disadvantage and may not have access to the internet or may not have devices that they can use to engage in virtual learning. It also helps to support other programs such as social work and mental health services and English as a second language services as well.
Also on CivicCenterTV.com, this kind of surprising, but not surprising as we're seeing outbreaks near college campuses. Outdoor gatherings in Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti restricted to 25 people. So this is taking things a step further. Outdoor gatherings in Ann Arbor and in Ypsi have been restricted to 25 people as both communities prepare to welcome students back to local college campuses during the pandemic. Washtenaw County Health Department issued the order, which is more strict than the number of people allowed to gather outside through the statewide executive order. Indoor gatherings remained limited at 10 or fewer people, not of the same household. The order is going to go into effect 5 p.m. today. It's going to remain in effect from here on out until they deem it no longer necessary. Violators of the order could be fined up to $200 and face a misdemeanor with up to 6 months in prison. However, they are saying that fines and jail time most likely not going to happen. It's going to be about education. But if you continue to violate this, and read between the lines, this is going to be aimed at your fraternities, sororities, and all those back-to-school college parties.
Oh, definitely. And in college towns like Ann Arbor, neighboring areas, Ypsilanti is another area that's really close to Eastern Michigan University. They're taking these measures knowing that college kids are, as of now, coming back to campus and are living on campus and are going to be throwing parties. And that there's been a lot of gatherings lately as well that have led to some spikes in certain counties throughout the state. So taking those precautions that they feel necessary in their municipality to prevent the spread of coronavirus.
I will be surprised if both universities allow students to remain on campus. We saw MSU this week announce that they are asking undergrads who stay in the college dorms not to return to the college campus. I would think maybe a few weeks into the year, if we start to see a spike, that other colleges are going to feel the same way. But if you live off campus, can you control that?
It's a good question, and it's going to depend person to person. I don't think everybody's going to end up following it. I don't even think the vast majority of people necessarily are going to follow it, and that's why schools such as Michigan State have told students to stay home, and they're going to be entirely virtual. It's because that calculation's been made, albeit better late than never, with MSU, with being 2 weeks out from kids moving back in or moving in general, and they've had all summer preparing for that. But it's a precaution that needed to be taken, and I guess it's better to take those precautions now than to wait 2 or 3 weeks into the school year when you do have an outbreak and make that an oops, sorry gesture.
You'll find all those stories and more on CivicCenterTV.com. We've also listed links to your CDC resources. That's how a lot of these schools are making the decisions that they are making. They are going by the guidelines listed from the CDC. Go there and you can find links to the state of Michigan, Oakland County, as well as all the local communities here throughout Oakland County. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keefe. You're listening and watching the Oakland County Megacast. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we made it through the primaries, Tyler. But this is not a time for a break for all the people that work in our area clerk's office, because before you know it, the November election will be here. So we'll be talking to the West Bloomfield Township clerk. How did they survive the primaries? And are they going to be ready for the upcoming November election? You're watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards. Back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart. Keep wearing a mask in public. And if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus.
Thank you for joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keefe as we work to bring you all the latest information Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon regarding all things COVID-19 related during this crazy time that we are trying to navigate. Our first guest today, we made it through the primary, but it's not a vacation time. So I would not imagine you're going to be taking a vacation. We are going to be speaking with Debbie Binder, West Bloomfield Township Clerk. Thank you for always being with us on the Oakland County Megacast. How did you survive the primary?
You know, it's funny, I laughed at what you said, taking a vacation. My goal the last 2 weeks was to take some time off to kind of recover in between the primary and the general, and I think I managed to get half a day off. So yes, you're correct. It has been, we survived. It's actually the correct word. It was a very busy primary, very busy. And we anticipate that we're going to probably see more than double the turnout for the November election. So we are already in preparation and planning mode, still trying to finalize everything with the primary.
We do want to say thank you to you and your team and all the hard work that you have been doing. Again, just like what Tyler does here for Civic Center TV, I don't think the general public understands what you and your team are going through. One of the biggest issue, the mail-in ballots and the absentee ballots. Kind of explain why that takes so long.
Okay, well, it takes so long because every time we get in a mail-in ballot, first we verify the signature when we get the application in, and we don't send a ballot unless we have a signature verified application. Then when the ballot comes back, we verify that signature again. It's done by hand. Then we pull the application, compare them again, and then that ballot goes over into the bin that goes over to the AV counting board on election day. So there's a lot of back end procedures that go on before that ballot goes back out to be counted. Many checks in place. I just actually took my team captains this week on a tour of the back room to explain the back end stuff that goes on for my team captains from my AV county board, and they couldn't believe how much work actually goes into it and how many checks are in place. That's one of the things I really encourage people who have concern about mail-in ballots. Work an election. Work and find out what really goes on. It's reassuring and it's enlightening. So it is a process. It is a big job. And we did see, to give you an idea, Ronnie, from the last similar election, in 2016 August, we had 6,055 mail-in ballots. This time we had 16,777. So 77% of the ballots cast in this election were cast by AV, or absentee absent voters. And it's important to remember that this is a right that is guaranteed in the Michigan Constitution with Proposal 3 of 2018, and it was overwhelmingly approved. People have the right to vote by absentee ballot or, mail-in ballot. Some say it's interchangeable, some say it's not, but whichever way, it is a right that is protected in the Michigan Constitution. And that's important to remember. It was approved so overwhelmingly that people need to always remember it's their right. And we follow and adhere to election law in every clerk's office in Michigan. That's our job, and anything we do does adhere to election law.
A lot of people fought and died for our right to vote, so it's exciting to see more people voting. But when it's an absentee, this is not a quick, rip open the envelopes, feed it through the machine and make it happen. So what do you think is going to happen in November?
We have actually done a lot of planning to make sure that we can get those processed as quickly as possible. We use one scanner now per precinct, which will keep the number manageable of what they can process on election day. And the people who are processing them are working in groups of 3. in a team of 3, and each of those teams has different parties represented. So any decisions that need to be made in terms of a determination on a ballot, whether they actually crossed over a vote, are done in the presence of 2 parties. But those teams work together as a group of 3 with the goal of protecting voter privacy. The first person on the team opens the envelope and verifies the stub number inside with the stub that's on the outside to verify that that's the voter's ballot. They see the number and the name, but they never see the ballot. They pull that ballot out in the secrecy sleeve, and they put the ballot in the secrecy sleeve in a basket that goes to the second person, who removes the stub and removes the ballot from the secrecy sleeve, so that person number 2 never sees the person's name. So that's done with intent, that the person who sees the ballot doesn't see the person's name, the person who sees the name never sees the person's ballot, and then the third person, what we call station 3, feeds the ballot through the tabulator. So the design is important to make sure we have parties represented for these determinations when they're needed, and enough people to make sure that we have enough teams per precinct, but we're able to keep that number. Even if we have a full turnout, we're able to keep the number that each machine is processing to manageable. I didn't say it won't be busy, because remember, we're taking those ballots in until 8 p.m. on election day. In this last primary, we had a line from first thing in the morning till the end of the day at our drop box. 20% of our ballots, our 3,400 ballots, came in on election day. And we don't just pick them up out of the box at 8 o'clock and take them over to the AV County Board. They go through that same signature verification process that others go through. And it takes a good hour before we can get them all processed and get them over to the team at the end of the day. And that's not including the ones we've been removing all day long from the drop box in processing. So it's a big operation. We have temporary staff that comes in of sworn-in election workers. We have we probably had 85 people working the absent voter counting board on election day. Again, 25 precincts. We had 5 precincts in a team with a table captain, and then we had 2 super chairs overseeing all 25. So it was a process. And then after they process them at the end of the day, there's an audit that's done that we do internally. We call it an informal audit, but the numbers have to match. And then the county does the Board of Canvassers does an additional audit, and they have 3 weeks after an election to certify that election with the official results. So the whole process from A to Z is much bigger than people realize. It takes about 2 to 3 months to prepare for an election and about a month to do the follow-up. So big job.
Super big job. And you know, Debbie, we talked to you at length prior to the primary, but still here I am learning new things, talking to you today after the primary. One of the things you kept trying to encourage all of our listeners and viewers, vote early because of everything that's going on with the Postal Service. Secretary of State Benson said there were more than 10,000 primary election ballots that were deemed invalid. Most of those had to do because they arrived after the polls closed. How important will it be for the state of Michigan to change that law?
Okay, well, that's a different situation because there's a legal challenge to that law right now. So at this point, election law requires that those ballots be received by the clerk's office at 8 p.m. And there's no changing that without it being a legislative change, which at this point there is a lawsuit. But I don't know that that's going to happen in the immediate future. Right now, it dictates that we have to have those ballots by 8 p.m. So our best defense in this situation is voter education. And we've worked really hard to make sure our voters are educated. With your help, with the help of the regional media has done a pretty good job getting that word out that the mail was running delayed. About 4 weeks before the election, when we realized these ballots were taking 10 to 13 days for the mail to get to the voter and that to get back, we did an all-out effort to try to get that voter education component into play. And I'm proud to say now, as we're sitting here 2 weeks after the election, so I'm pretty confident that we've seen the late ballots come in, that we have had our typical number of late ballots. We did a good job getting that word out. It was not an abnormal number of late ballots this election at all. And again, I wanted to emphasize that we received 20% or 3,400 ballots on election day. That drop box was lined up all day long. So I think our voters got the message to not rely on the post office to try to get that ballot back to town hall. But I do want to emphasize one thing when I say don't rely on the post office. we have a decent number of voters that don't have a choice. They have to rely on the mail. So as I see all of these efforts to tell people on Facebook and in memes to not mail your ballot back, we need to be conscious and remember that we have a decent voting population that doesn't have an option. They have to rely on the mail. They're out of town. They're at school, away at school. They're in senior living facilities. They don't have the means to get to town hall. So our education for those voters is that get your ballot back early. If you're relying on the mail and you have to rely on the mail, don't wait. When those ballots will go out the end of September, the last week in September, as soon as you get that ballot, vote it, get it back in the mail. Figure it's going to take 3 weeks for that ballot to get back. Not that I'm saying it should take that, but that is what we're seeing is, again, 10 to 13 days. So allow a minimum of 2 weeks. And I would prefer to tell people 3 weeks to have that ballot get back to town hall. If you have the option of bringing it directly to town hall, I would encourage voters to use the drop box on either side of the building. We have a large one on the west side of the building and a shared one with other township departments on the east side of the building. They're open 24/7. The few weeks before an election, when we're getting many in, I check it over the weekend so that it's emptied. It doesn't get overstuffed. So I would encourage voters who have that as an option to use those drop boxes or bring it directly to the clerk's office or use the drop box in front of the clerk's window. But I also want to remind people that there are voters that don't have that option. And if you are one that doesn't have that option and has to rely on the mail, please mail early.
Debbie, for those that had previously voted in the polls, maybe they did so even in the primary elections, but for the general election with the COVID-19 pandemic ongoing, they may now want to switch to voting absentee. How do they begin that process, and how long does that generally take for people to apply and then get their ballots?
Interestingly, Tyler, as I've mentioned to you before, a poll voter is a poll voter and an absentee voter is typically an absentee voter. Obviously, we've seen some change this year. They usually love the way we vote. The way that they vote. The one thing we did see this election that was interesting is we had more spoiled ballots in the precinct from people who procured an absentee ballot in anticipation of the polls not being open. And when the polls were actually open, they surrendered that ballot and voted in the polls because they really liked that experience. I'm a poll voter too. I like to walk away with my sticker. I think I like the energy. I like the experience. But this year, I will be honest, in a COVID environment, I did choose to vote absentee, and I'm glad I had that right to choose. So in terms of asking, I know you did ask also what the process is. If someone wants to vote absentee, we already had a dual application go out, and we have over 21,000 applications in for the November general election already. But we know we will be doing probably about 30 to 36,000 absentee ballots. So the options to get that application are to either go to the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's page, and you can download the version of our application and send that in. You can also go to the state website and download the state application, send that in, or you can call us and we can mail an application to you. Or one of the even easier ways is once those ballots are in at the end of September, you can come to the clerk's office and get that application right here. And if the ballots are in, you'll leave with your ballot in hand. And that's something a lot of people enjoy. We can't mail ballots past the Friday before an election at 4 p.m. And if we can give them to people or mail them to people who spoil their ballot up until Saturday at 2 p.m. But I do want to point out that we are open all day Saturday before an election from 8 to 4 for absentee voting. And we are going to be open additional Saturdays this year to make it easier for people to vote absentee. So we will publish those hours once we've established them that will allow people. One important thing is that you can get those absentee ballots up until 4 p.m. the Monday before the election. But on Saturday and Monday, unless you're spoiling a ballot, you have to come into town hall. And on Monday, you cannot leave town hall with your ballot. You would have to vote it right here. So I know that's a lot of detail for people to remember. And in that case, the best thing is call the clerk's office. We're really friendly and we like to help. So we will give you the information that you need to make sure you're able to obtain your absentee ballot by 4 p.m. on election day. I'm sorry, not on election day, on the day before the election, the Monday preceding the election. 4 p.m. is the deadline for absentee voting, except same-day registrants, which Proposal 3 also allowed people to register on election day. And people who register on election day do have a choice of voting in a precinct or or voting absentee. Those are the only people that may vote by absentee on election day.
Debbie, you're always a wealth of knowledge. And yes, you are always friendly along with your team over there at the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's office. We're speaking with Debbie Binder. In this last election, Secretary of State Benson said they did catch about 850 ballots that were from dead people, less than 1,000. Is voter fraud really an issue, or is it? It's always an issue. One vote counts. We all want our votes to count, but this has become such a political issue. How big of a problem is this, and what measures are in place to catch these votes so they're not counted?
I guess, let me first say, I am the secretary to the board of the Oakland County Clerks Association, so I'm very involved with my colleagues of both parties. And I can tell you that all of us pretty much concur that voter fraud is not a rampant problem or widespread problem at all. And if people see the process, again, that an absentee ballot goes through, they would be far reassured. So one of the concerns this time was that when the Secretary of State sent out those applications, and they did go to people who were deceased, people need to remember that a ballot's not being sent unless we get a verified signature return. So, the applications go, there's a process for cleaning up the voter roll. And that application this time was sent to everybody on the voter roll. And if you think about it, you wouldn't want your neighbor being able to call and say, because they know how you're going to vote and don't agree, that, take so-and-so off the voter roll, they moved. It doesn't work that way. There's a process for removing a name from the voter roll. And there's a lot of public records that mix with the voter roll and voters are removed, but there are some that don't. If somebody dies out of the country or different situations, the voter roll may not know. People's kids grow up and they haven't changed when they moved out of state. But again, a ballot won't be sent until that verified signature application is received. So this will actually give us an opportunity to clean up that voter roll, because when we do not hear from some voters, again, we're following and adhering completely to election law. To remove somebody from the voter roll, once you get an indication that they may have moved or may have passed away, you send what's called a cancellation card to that voter. And that voter, if the voter responds with a signature on that cancellation card, they stay on the voter roll. If they don't respond, we cannot remove them by law for 2 full election cycles. That's a primary and a general election cycle, so that's 4 years. So it is not a quick process to remove somebody from the voter roll. But again, I remind people, you wouldn't want your neighbor being able to call and get you removed from the voter roll. So it's an important, well thought out process to clean up those voter rolls. This will be an opportunity to clean them up. But again, I know you're one focus, and I can't maintain enough and tell you that all of my clerk friends of different parties will tell you that it is not a widespread problem. And this, it was not, the concept of mail-in or absentee voting was not a partisan issue until recent times. And it really shouldn't be. Right now and this year, it's a matter of safety and allowing every voter to safely cast their ballot in the way that they're comfortable with, and again, in accordance with their right as protected in the Michigan Constitution. And when it comes down to it, it really is that simple. It's their right protected in the Michigan Constitution, and our job is to protect voters' rights.
We thank you so much, Debbie Binder with the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's office. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for always coming on the Oakland County Megacast and informing not only Tyler and I, but all of our listeners and viewers about the policies and the procedures so that we can all make sure our vote does count, because this election we need everyone to exercise their right. And like we said before, people died and fought for our right to have our voices heard, and this is the best way to do it. So thank you so much to Debbie Binder and your entire team over there at the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's office. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back on the Oakland County Megacast, we are going to shift and talk a little bit about science and how the advancement of science is helping to save lives here in the state of Michigan.
Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonae Caldoon. I'm the Chief Medical Executive for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The people who are at highest risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19 are the elderly and those with chronic medical conditions. That includes people with heart disease, diabetes, COPD, or those who have compromised immune systems. People who are in those categories should right now be staying at home as much as possible and not going out if it is not essential. If you fit into one of those categories, those are the things you should do. And if you have a family member who fits into one of those categories, you should be checking in on them and making sure they are following those guidelines. There's something everyone can do to protect the community from COVID-19.
Thank you for joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dull alongside Tyler Keith, where you can tune in and listen to us live Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to noon on CivicCenterTV.com, Birmingham Area Municipal Access 89.3 Lakes FM and 88.1 FM The Biff. You can watch us on Channel 15 on Comcast, Channel 99 on AT&T. Right now, our second guest today, we are going to be joined by Dr. Luis Villa-Diaz, Professor of Biological Sciences, Oakland University. Can I tell you, I have been fascinated by stem cell research since I covered the story. It must have been 8-10 years ago when this became legal in the state of Michigan. You guys are doing amazing things.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, stem cell biology is a very remarkable field and a very interesting and is making great progress and in terms of clinical applications, but also just to understand our bodies, the development of our bodies and how our bodies and organs work, and stem cells are playing an important role in that understanding.
So, Doctor, for all of us that aren't super smart, such as yourself, we don't have medical degrees, and in general terms, talk a little bit about stem cell research, how it's helping in our day-to-day health, and with, it covers so many different things. It's not just one area of science and biology, right? I mean, there's so many different areas that this research is being utilized.
Yeah, you're right. Stem cells has been used for many years for many applications. One of them is just the use, for example, of hematopoietic stem cells, which are the stem cells that make all these cells of the blood lineage. Your blood, red blood cells, your leukocytes, and many cells of the immune system, right? So, for example, these stem cells has been used in clinics for decades. When people go to the Red Cross and or to the hospital and get a blood transfusion, in many cases, stem cells, hematopoietic stem cells, go into your body for a specific treatment. And like that, there are many other examples in which different stem cells are using for clinical applications. But not only for that, we are only now using many stem cells and cells that we derive from stem cells to do drug testing. I mean, to develop the drugs and the medicines that will be used in clinical therapies, right? Because in the past, how traditionally has been done is doing this testing in animals, right? In mouse, in rats, in dogs, in many other species. And then you figure out whether the drug that you are testing is working in that animal species. And then you hope that will work in a human cells. But now with the stem cells, especially with embryonic stem cells or we induce pluripotent stem cells, we can derive any cell type of our body. And now we can do those drug testing, at least in vitro, directly in human cells. And now we can go with more certainty that that drug that we are testing is going to work in a human, or it will not have a complications. So stem cells are now doing many of that. And of course, we are developing now many other fields and try to understand many more applications.
Dr. Luis Villa-Diaz with us, professor of biological sciences at Oakland University, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And Doctor, you were recently awarded a grant by the National Science Foundation for your research on stem cell biology and the potential use of stem cells in regenerative medicine. What research projects are you working on with those grant funds, and how could those potentially be beneficial to the general public?
Okay, yeah, so my research, the research that we are going to cover with this grant is basic stem cell biology. What we mean with that is that we are trying to understand just basically how stem cells work. Stem cells has two main properties. One property that they do have is that they have the capacity to divide into an identical daughter cell and to another stem cell, right? And another property of stem cells will have is that they have also the capacity to differentiate into a specialized cell type, right? So the stem cell has to make a decision in some point. I'm going to divide to make another stem cell, or I'm going to differentiate into a different cell type. So what I study, what my students in the research lab are doing is try to understand the mechanism of that decision that the stem cell is going to do it, right? What is involved in that? What is the microenvironment where the stem cells live, helping to make that decision or influencing to make that decision? And then if the environment is doing that, what are the proteins and genes that are carrying that information from outside of the cell to the nucleus of the cell to make that final decision? So what will be the application? Well, just the basic understanding of this mechanism will help us to better maintain cells in an undifferentiated state, just to do more cell renewal, to produce more stem cells, or to induce them for a specific cell lineage differentiation. And then those cell lineage differentiation, we can use it for multiple applications in the future.
So, Doctor, I know that it actually took this getting on the ballot, stem cell research, back in, I believe 2008 for this to get passed. But there have been a lot of big proponents of stem cell research, one of them being Christopher Reeve, known as Superman. Do you think having people such as him behind this movement has helped make it happen, and it's helping save lives now?
Yeah, I think so. It's always good to have the backup of the public, right? The understanding of the public, and it's always helpful to have a public figure who understand to advocate for a good cause, or to bring attention to something, so the general public then get attention at least and start to getting educated. So I think just what Superman did, what Jane Fox is doing too, with his foundation, Jimmy Fox with his foundations, with many other public figures, and with many also us scientists and advocates, patients. Many patients are talking the benefits that the stem cells may have in the future, or that they already have on them. So with this, just create more aware and help to educate the public, help to break down the stigma that could have, and that has a positive benefit.
We are speaking with Dr. Luis Villa-Diaz, Professor of Biological Sciences, Oakland University, here on the Megacast. We thank you for being on our show. We are in the middle of a pandemic. You are also a professor. What's this been like for you and for your students as well?
Well, yeah, it was a big change in our life, like in anybody else, but right. This pandemic hit us here in Michigan in late March, right? And then, so we were in the middle of the semester. Students were coming to classes, and all the students, we have to send them home, right? And for them to take classes online. And so for them was a big change, something unexpected. The same thing was for us, for the teachers. We have now all the students to adapt to that new reality, to prepare our classes online. Many of us have already some level of preparation in terms of online teaching, but many of us, including me, we have no preparation at all until that moment. So we have to adapt quickly. I think we did in general fine. I think the students adapt very well. And, everybody did as best as we could. But this also not only impact teaching in terms of classes, or also impacted us in the terms of research, right? I mean, the same thing happened with us. We have to close our laboratories. We have to stop all our research completely, no matter in what stage of the research we were. So that created a big impact on us, because delay us in getting results back, and many other consequences associated with that.
How long do you think the delays set you back in your research?
Well, I mean, we effectively were closed since late March until middle of June, so almost 3 months. And then we just back in July, we start working again in my laboratory with very limited conditions. At the moment, I only have only a graduate student working in the lab. Right now, we are allowed to have undergraduate students, but at the very beginning in July was not, just graduate students. So many of our research, specifically here in Oakland, and my research in my laboratory is done by undergraduate students. So those projects at the moment are stopped, right, until they are coming back and we are able to resume them. So yes, we have a significant delay in some of our projects. Other ones, the ones that my graduate student is able to do it, he's working hard, and we are making good progress, and we are back to training new students. Just to train a new student, that's another impact. Right now, with the new limitations that we have in terms of social distancing that we still have to maintain in the lab, it's very difficult to train new students, because you really need to work close with them to explain in detail all the procedures and all the characteristics. So it is making it more difficult. Therefore, for example, I am reducing the level of the amount of students that I was planning in recruiting for the new semester, because I would not be able to do the right training for them.
I will say I would have been happy if my 9th grade biology class, where we had to dissect a frog, was virtual. But if you're studying to be a medical doctor, I would imagine there are some things you can do virtual, but in person is so vital. So if this continues past this semester, do you think you're going to see some students drop out? Or if they continue, will they be better doctors or worse doctors going through this?
Well, I hope they don't drop in their studies. I hope they have the convictions to keep going. It's a difficult time for everybody in every situation, and of course, it's also for them to have their plans to go on in their studies. So I really will encourage and I will hope that they continue with their goals, right? I think will be a period of adaptation for everybody, like in any field, where we will need to figure out how to do it. But yes, I agree that, for example, medical students right now that are missing critical months in their training, where they could have experience, right, in laboratories or in visiting or attending surgeries and so on, and they are not able to do it. So they are missing some level of education. I just hope that they are able to recover, that we figure out all together how to get that time recover. And I think that goes, in every single level. I was talking to my son, who is just in elementary school. This year is going to be difficult for him and for every other student. And maybe they will not learn as much, but it's more important to be healthy, to be safe, and then later we will have time to recover, and we will work harder to recover all that time that we miss in our education.
Dr. Villa-Diaz with us, Professor of Biological Sciences at Oakland University, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Dr. Diaz, your lab recently acquired a new flow cell sorter. In layman's terms, what is this new piece of equipment and what does it do to help aid your research? Right, yeah. So we was not specifically for my lab. Was a grant that I am the principal investigator together with many more investigators here in the departments of biological science, in chemistry, in the Eye Research Institute, and also with the support of the provost office, the president office, the dean of the Department of Biological Science, and many other institutions, the CBR Foundation here. So we applied for this grant to obtain this flow cell sorter. The flow cell sorter, or FACS, how we call it, is an instrument that helps us to analyze populations of cells at the single level or single cell. So you could have, let's say, 1 million cells. So you can run these million cells in this instrument, and this instrument is going to suck one by one. So we'll create 1 million events, that's what we call it, and it will be able to, through using laser beams, will be able to detect specific proteins, the expression of specific proteins, whether they are present or not, in what quantity they are present in the cells. And also is able not only to identify that in a very fast and precise manner, but it's also you are able to recover the cells if you want. You can sort the cells. Let's say I want to sort X population of cells that should have this protein to be expressed. Well, the machine is not going to be able to detect these cells within that population and are going to separate it from the rest of the cells that doesn't have it, and it's going to return it to me in a tube that I can then take and do other experiments with those cells. So that will allow us, me and many other of my colleagues, to do many experiments and to advance our research because now we can potentialize the use of samples.
So kind of going off of that, there are so many advancements, and to the general public at one time, stem cell research seemed like something out of the scientific future, right? Like a sci-fi movie or something of that nature. But it is real, and you're changing lives with your research. Where do you see it going in the future, let's say 10, 15, 20 years from now?
A big potentials. We are moving I remember when I started working with the stem cells in 2004, that were already some visionary scientists, researchers with the stem cells, and they were saying, well, in the future, probably we will not need to have the need to raise animals for food. Probably we can create just steaks out of the stem cells, right? Well, we are not quite yet in that stage, or that's maybe not the field that we want, but we are creating or try to create organs, right? And that's one of the promises of stem cells, that it still has a long way to be accomplished. However, I can tell you that we have made big progress in many different cell types, in different organs or prototypes of organs. Also, we have bioengineered organs in a different way, functional organs in a different way, that are being used already or they are being tested already for a therapeutic use. For example, for diabetes, we are able to, or a group of scientists are able to differentiate pluripotent stem cells into cells that produce insulin, cells of the pancreas. And then they are able to encapsulate these insulin-producing cells in specific scaffolds that they protect these cells from the microenvironment. Now they are able to put those scaffolds with insulin-producing cells that they were derived from stem cells, and put it in the body. And these cells are able to read, the levels of glucose in the body, and are able to produce the insulin accordingly to what is needed. I mean, they are replacing the failing pancreas. That is already happening. There are clinical trials, there are companies doing this. All of these research start in laboratories just like mine, but they are moving also to the industry, and they are moving also to the clinic.
Dr. Luis Villa-Diaz, Professor of Biological Sciences, Oakland University. Fascinating conversation. Thank you for your work, and thank you to your team as well. And we wish you all the best going forward. It is so awesome, so great to have people such as you with your knowledge and your passion to be a part of our community and to help all of us improve our lives and the future. Thank you for being on the Oakland County Megacast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Dr. Luis Villa-Diaz, Professor of Biological Science, Oakland University. Tyler, they are doing some incredible research over there. I remember as a reporter covering the stem cell research when the law passed back in 2008. So I'm kind of dating myself a little bit here. It seems like it was yesterday, but when you say, oh my gosh, it was over 10 years ago. But I remember the controversy surrounding that and all the medical doctors coming out and advocating for the good that this research was going to do for us and for our communities and for our brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers. And we are seeing that right here. This is a doctor that is leading the way.
Yeah, and that future that he talked about with being able to, their first aim is to be able to produce organs using these stem cells. That's going to be, if that's able to be done viably and safely, that's going to be huge in the future for the medical community, as we often have people that need transplanted organs that are waiting for several months, maybe even years, for those organs that they so desperately need out of a lack of availability or other people having higher priority. And if stem cell research advances itself well enough into the future, we may be able to produce organs for people that need them when they need them, and that could save a lot of lives.
I think by far one of the best things about the Oakland County Megacast is we are able to have so many of these diverse guests on our show, and they are allowed to speak at length about their work and what they are doing to contribute and to change our community and our society. Fascinating conversation, although I will say I'm not near as smart as he was, so some of that went over my head. But at the end of the day, they're doing great work over there at Oakland University. I'm Ronnie Dahl. I'm alongside Tyler Keith. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to dip our toes back into the world of politics. on the Oakland County Megacast.
This may seem uncomfortable, but so is being hooked to an IV, sleeping in a hospital bed, and fighting for your life. When it comes to COVID-19, comfort is not as important as saving lives. Wearing a mask can greatly reduce the chance of spreading the virus. So mask up, Michigan, every time you leave home.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Park's COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keith. You are watching and listening to us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. You can listen to us on the radio as well if you cannot get to your TV. 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM, The Biff. You can watch us on Channel 15 on Comcast, Channel 99 on AT&T, and our Facebook partner of the day, West Bloomfield Township Clerk's Office. So if you need to, you have access to the internet, to Facebook, which we all do. It's one of my most widely used apps, unfortunately. And so you can also watch us over there. 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. For our next guest, we are going to head a little bit to the north, and we are going to bring in Representative Sheryl Kennedy. She represents the 48th District, which is the Genesee County area. But as we know, Representative Kennedy, politics do not stop at the border, do they?
They do not, no.
Thank you for being on with us on the Oakland County Megacast. I guess I want to start off with the Democratic National Convention. Your take on how it's going this year. Is virtual working or not?
You know, I think virtual is where we are, whether we like it or not. I personally really miss the fun of the convention. Like, I was excited about being there this term. It's one of those once in a lifetime experiences. And before COVID, I had intended on going. And, there's something about the excitement, the energy of having a group of people together that you can't replace that. So, but in our current situation, the virtual is what we have to do because, for the health and safety of everyone. And I think given that, the format that they've been using has been effective. I think that we've been able to have more almost like an intimate conversation with candidates and leaders in our party. And I've been really, I love that the fact they can create a mosaic of our country and through people and people's stories and create that mosaic to really represent the democratic process and the diversity that that we have in our country, and also demonstrate the big tent that the Democratic Party is, which is, we're open to anyone who's interested in promoting democracy and democratic values. So I think it's been effective in that way. But I do, and of course, the speeches, Michelle Obama, oh my goodness, love her. And Kamala last night, she's so strong, and I'm just so excited to have her as the vice presidential candidate. And of course, I'm looking forward to Joe Biden, his acceptance speech. But I just, I wish we could all be together in person instead of virtually.
Representative Sheryl Kennedy, Michigan State Representative from the 48th District, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Representative Kennedy, yesterday you had an opportunity to speak at Governor Whitmer's press conference where she, as well as you and others, announced $65 million in funding for schools through federal CARES Act dollars and the governor's Education Emergency Relief Fund as well. Can you give a little more details on what some of those dollars will go towards for students and schools that are most in need?
Well, what's important to recognize is that when the CARES Act dollars came to the state, they were immediately they're allocated in a way that the federal government determined, and so that the CARES Act dollars were spread pretty evenly between districts. But as you and I know, different districts have different needs. And specifically because of the COVID crisis, because we're going to have experienced extreme learning loss, we know that those learning losses are going to be exponential in areas with greater poverty or greater issues regarding connectivity, issues regarding, I was a principal in Walled Lake. I had a number of English language learners, all of those kind of specialized populations are the ones that are going to be struggling the most throughout this COVID crisis. And so the GEAR dollars from the governor are able to be directed more specifically to those at-risk populations. So the CARES Act dollars kind of goes to everybody, but then this money also is about making sure that the populations that need a little extra, if it's to get technology, connectivity to rural areas, if it's because you have a higher special education population in Flint, we have a higher special ed population because of the Flint water crisis. If you have a higher ELL population because you work in an immigrant community, those are the populations that we're making sure get a few extra dollars so that and mental health services. And also, this is really important, teacher education, because we've got amazing teachers in Michigan. I mean, amazing teachers, but they're trained to teach face-to-face in the classroom. And so taking those great lessons that they're comfortable with and finding a way to put that in a format that's usable via technology, it's a whole different look and it's a whole different skill set. So it's really important that we're able to support teachers with additional training. And honestly, we have a number of teachers, like 20% of our teachers didn't even have connectivity at home. Their only technology was at work at school. So we have to make sure our teachers are connected first before we can connect our kids. So these GEAR dollars are going to go to kind of plug all those gaps. And it's exciting to know that we have a governor who understands that and prioritizes that and created this budget in a way that we're taking care of all of our kids.
Representative, for our viewers and listeners out there that need this information, can you walk us through a little bit how it's actually going to work? We know typically the government is not fast. So with school starting in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, how will the districts and the teachers and the people that need this money, how will they get it and how quickly can they get it?
So this is going to be a part of their regular monthly payment. And honestly, as soon as the governor signs it, I think she may have already done that. I think she did that yesterday. It goes to the Treasury. And so it will go to the school districts based on formula. And they get paid once a month. School districts get money from the Michigan Treasury once a month. And so it'll be just a part of their Treasury based on the formula. Government moves really slow, but the nice thing about these CARES Act dollars and these GEAR dollars was that because of some work we passed earlier in the summer through appropriations, the governor was able to just appropriate these. And so it shouldn't go as slowly as, say, the full budget process, which we are still very much working on for the next year. So these dollars will be appropriated automatically. the budget, we're waiting to hear on Monday. We're having a revenue conference, which is unusual in August. Usually our last revenue conference is in May, but in May we were in the height of COVID, and so our revenue was way down. We needed to have another revenue conference in August to see if our revenue has come up. And once we know how much revenue we've accumulated over the summer in the state of Michigan through sales tax, then we'll know what kind of budget we have to spend on schools. We were also very hopeful that by now we'd have a bill passed in the U.S. Senate that would be supporting states and sending some extra money to states, because all of the states in the country, regardless if they're run by a Democratic or Republican governor, we're all in the same spot. Like, we've all had to shut down in some way, shape, or form, and revenue is down. So we were really hopeful that the Senate would get it together and be able to pass a bill that would help fill some of those gaps. That has not happened. So right now we have to build a budget based on just our state revenue, which again, we'll find out more about that on Monday. But that doesn't mean that we can't adjust once the Senate does get their act together and decide that the states do need some additional appropriations. And if that happens, then we can always go back and adjust and increase the amount of money that goes to schools and also local governments, police, fire, all the things that we depend upon tax dollars to provide those services for.
Representative Sheryl Kennedy with us, Michigan representative from the 48th district with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And to go back to the education funding, you had mentioned earlier that it is based on need, and every school district has different needs. Some will need more money for access to technology, for mental health and social work services as well. How is it determined what each school district's need is as this money is being prepared to be allocated on a monthly basis?
So there's a federal guideline as far as what we call Title I dollars. Title I is the money that we always get from the federal government, and those go to children of poverty. So essentially, we use the numbers for free and reduced lunch. So if a child is free or reduced lunch, then we report that number of students to the state of Michigan. They report it to the federal government, and then we get extra money called Title I money, and that's to meet the needs of those children. So, and that includes that free or reduced lunch. That's a part of it. Also, extra reading support, parapro support, those kinds of things. So the more children you have in your building who fit that criteria, the more money that school district gets from the federal government under what we call Title I dollars. And so we already have those numbers. Same thing for special education. We already know how many children we have who are currently on an IEP. That means that they get special services, and that's their civil right. So we have those numbers. We know how many children get social work services as a result of that. We have those numbers. And so there will be a formula set up by the state treasury so that we know those specialized populations, how large or small, and then districts will get money based on the need of those populations.
We are speaking with Sheryl Kennedy on the Oakland County Megacast. You are the state representative for the 48th district, which does include the city of Flint. And obviously the breaking news that is coming out of your area right now is the compensation fund with the legal settlement that is expected to be finalized, I believe today or tomorrow, $600 million. What can you say about this? How is it going to work? And does this bring the saga to an end?
Well, first of all, I just want to make sure that my district does not include Flint. However, my district is affected by the water crisis in the sense that the children who were poisoned by Flint water, populations move. And because I'm a suburb of Flint, we have a number of those students in our district as well, a number of those families in our district as well. So although I don't represent Flint specifically, we as Genesee County certainly are interested in that ongoing crisis, which is still continuing. I mean, it's still everybody in Flint still doesn't have clean water. So that needs to be said. The information that the governor was sharing today, my understanding was that this was supposed to be something that was being negotiated privately somehow. It got leaked to the press last night. So I do understand that the governor just made a statement about that. And the, unfortunate thing is, when the governor became governor and our new attorney general became the new attorney general, there were lawsuits against the governor of the state of Michigan, but of course that was Rick Snyder. But those lawsuits were never settled. And so now when Governor Gretchen Whitmer came into office, now those lawsuits were against her because she holds that seat. And on appropriations, we knew from the very beginning that a number of the lawsuits, and not just for Flint Water, I mean, there are so many lawsuits that were brought across the state of Michigan against Rick Snyder and the former attorney general in a number of state departments for negligence, that those lawsuits, the right thing to do was to settle them. They were appropriate lawsuits. There was real harm that was done. And so the ethical and the correct thing to do was to settle these lawsuits and make sure that people are taken care of. They'll never be made whole. I mean, how do you make a child whole that's been poisoned from lead in the water, right? But we want to make sure that their needs are being met. And so we've known in the appropriations committee that we had to hold back a chunk of money that should have been going, to pay for our state services because we had to settle these lawsuits because it was the right thing to do. So I'm glad that those negotiations have been ongoing. I haven't been a part of them. I haven't been privy to them. We just knew that they were ongoing. And I'm glad that we're coming to a point where we can put some closure to this. I'm hoping that the folks who are affected feel that it's a fair settlement. I'm sure we'll be hearing, if there is concern about that. But I'm glad to know that we're at least taking this next step and trying to do what's right for those people, because it was not their fault that they were put in harm's way because of negligence and greed.
Still crazy to think that so many people still don't have clean water. I know some communities, some households still using bottled water. But just in general terms on some of these compensation funds, if you can educate us on how do they work? Are they taxpayer funded? Because is the state self-insured? How does all that work? Is this going to be out of our tax dollars? And with all of this going on top of COVID and the pandemic, eventually we're going to have to start paying for this, right?
Yes, and that's what's unfortunate is I'm not sure if there's an insurance piece that's a part of it. I would be surprised if there wasn't, but I know that there's a big chunk that is just taxpayer dollars and the taxpayer dollars that were going just into the legal fees when Rick Snyder was governor, that, because he was fighting and fighting and fighting. I mean, millions and millions and millions of our taxpayer dollars that we never saw the benefit of because they were going into these legal fees. And so, that again brings that to an end. But, what's so sad, and I can speak to the Flint water crisis because it's so close to home, is that they made that decision to save something like $100 a day. They made the decision to give contaminated water to their citizens to save $100 a day. And you think of the tens of millions of dollars that my hard work, your hard work, our taxes go to, that we'll never see the benefit of, because someone decided that they needed to save $100 a day and we'll just give people contaminated water and maybe no one will notice. I mean, I don't know. I can't even begin to think what the thought process was there other than just greed. And so anyway, yeah, we pay. As taxpayers, we pay. So we pay now, we pay later. I would have preferred that we invested in our water system. I would have preferred that we invested in our infrastructure. I would have preferred that we made sure that our, drinking water was safe for everyone. And we invested that money and came out with a better quality of life for everyone. But instead, because of poor decision making, we are using that money, and we still haven't replaced that infrastructure fully. So it's just tragic all the way around.
Sheryl Kennedy, the Michigan State Representative for the 48th District, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We need to wrap up with you, but before we let you go, anything that you want to share with our listeners and viewers about what's going on in your district or anywhere across the state of Michigan?
Well, we, of course, it's election season, so that's a whole thing. But one thing that's really exciting, and this is just very locally, but this is why state government is important and local government is important. Yes, it's important that we show up and we vote for the president, but also please make sure you know who you're voting for down ballot. We're excited that we have a PFAS site in my district. It's an abandoned landfill. It's been a mess for a decade. And the PFAS is leaching in the groundwater. It costs us, the state of Michigan, again, those wasted tax dollars, a ton of money to pull the leachate out and get it to the water treatment plant. And we were able to acquire a $1.1 million grant that's going to fix it and put a cap on this abandoned landfill, and that will stop the PFAS from leaching into the groundwater. That was something that we were able to do because we got all of our local government leaders together. We pulled in folks from Eagle, we pulled in folks from the Flint watershed, and we brainstormed and we came up with a solution. And then it was my job as the state representative to go to the state of Michigan and saying, this is what we need. We can fix a problem, and we need $1 million. And we were able to do that. So those are the little things that make a big difference in people's lives. There are a lot of homeowners around that area. It's on a reservoir that people fish and boat and enjoy for leisure. And so those are the little wins that make a huge difference in anyone's district. And so just get to know your candidate and know what they've been doing and make sure that they're actually working for a living, and vote for the person that's going to actually represent you and the needs of your district. So I'll just give that little shout out because we're going to start that work in the end of this month. I'm really excited about it.
Thank you so much for being with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Sheryl Kennedy, State Representative for Michigan's 48th District. It does all of us good to take a few minutes of our time to research all of the candidates, all of the issues in your area before you actually cast your vote. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking schools on the Oakland County Megacast.
As rivals, we don't always see eye to eye.
Like who scored the best recruits?
Who's gonna be who?
And whether we wear green
Or blue. But one thing we can all agree on to help stop the spread of COVID-19, wear a mask.
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 The ball's in your court, Michigan.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards, back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart, keep wearing a mask in public, and if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keith. Next, we are going to shift gears a little bit from politics, although there are some politics involved in what is happening with all of our school districts right now. Jianna Taylor, School Improvement Coordinator, West Bloomfield School District. We are going to bring her in, and you know, what a crazy time right now for everyone involved in our school to try to make these decisions. First of all, do you bring the kids back? Do you not bring them back? Do you bring them back in a hybrid format? What's it going to look like? And this is something that is changing every day. Jianna, how are you doing? How are you even handling this crazy time right now?
Yeah, I will say that our teachers, our administrators, our central office team, we've probably been working close to 6 to 7 days per week since March, especially once we realized that coming back in the fall was not going to be a normal start to the school year. So we're tired, but we're optimistic that we've created the best plan that we can to bring students and staff safely back, but also provide really rigorous, robust instruction for students so that they do have that face-to-face time with their teacher, in addition to some virtual time.
So you are the school improvement coordinator. What exactly does that mean, and what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
So actually my full title is the ELA, which is like English, MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support. So that's like helping kids at all levels get support. And then school improvement is also part of my title. So I coordinate our English curriculum, kindergarten through 12th grade. I work on ensuring that students have supports academically and behaviorally, and school improvement kind of encompasses everything, but there's some pretty specific state reporting that is aligned to that particular role.
So as we are going into the fall semester, what are you seeing are some of the big issues? How have you been able to overcome them? And are kids handling this pretty well, or is it their parents that seem to be the bigger issue?
Well, since we haven't started school yet, we don't start until next Wednesday. We don't exactly know how students are handling it. I know how my own daughter is handling it, but she's obviously not representative of everyone. But in the spring, when we were still in school for last year, we did hold a number of student panels because we wanted to hear from students about their experience with this kind of like pandemic schooling that we experienced in the spring, and what their thoughts were coming back to school. So we actually shared a few different plans with them at the time, because obviously we had no idea what the fall would look like. And kids, they are nervous about coming back in person. They're really wondering about safety protocols, like what is lunch going to look like? What are the hallways going to look like? What is going to the bathroom going to look like? So while they are hesitant, they do want to see their teachers. They do want that face-to-face instruction. So we wanted to try and balance both of those, but also making decisions that would keep people healthy and safe, which is ultimately why we decided that our high school would start the year online totally, because in a school of 1,800, we could not find a way to bring everyone back safely.
Jianna Taylor with us. She is the School Improvement Coordinator, MTS and ELA, for the West Bloomfield School District, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And in incorporating those plans, particularly for the high school, you mentioned having heavy student involvement. There's also a great involvement with the rest of the community, including parents and teachers as well. Talk about that involvement as well in the plans and how key of a role those two categories of people played.
So throughout this entire process, we have tried to be as transparent as we possibly could. We've probably held like 50 hours of webinars and focus groups with people since the spring. We've had parent focus groups, we had staff webinars. We just before I was on this call, we were having a Canvas 101 webinar to help students and parents understand our new learning management system and what that will look like. So we've tried to be really transparent and help people understand our thinking, but also get their feedback so that we can make the best plans possible for our community, which I know is different than what a lot of school districts around us are doing, but we feel that this is the best for our particular community.
I do. I think West Bloomfield, your leaders, you guys have been doing an amazing job. And of course, you're not going to make every parent happy. You're not going to make every student happy, but really trying to listen and do what's best for the overall population. You guys have been amazing in that. I kind of think about, I am a little bit older and I don't have kids, but I know that when you're in school, it's about the interaction and meeting people from different backgrounds and different religions that open you up. Are you worried that kids are going to be somewhat more in a bubble and they're missing that exposure to people from different backgrounds than their own?
So one of the great things about West Bloomfield is how diverse it is. I think we have nearly 60 languages spoken in the district. And so kids do have that exposure here that they maybe wouldn't have in other places. And lacking face-to-face interaction is going to be a challenge for some students and some teachers. And we hope this isn't forever. Like at some point, we're going to come back face-to-face and things are going to be how they were before. But we also think that with our virtual options and the high school starting online, that we can build those relationships through Zoom, through the screen, that teachers and students can still get to know each other really well, even if they're not right with each other. And especially our K-8 students, because they are going to be seeing their teachers and each other for half days for 4 days during the week, they will still be able to foster those relationships. They just won't be together for a prolonged amount of time. And because students will be broken into 2 cohorts, they'll have 15 or so students in their cohort. They're going to get to know those students a lot better. And their teacher is going to be able to provide them with a really personalized, individualized instruction because there aren't 30 kids in the class at one time.
Yeah, if there's anything that's positive coming out of this is the smaller classrooms, which I know a lot of teachers have been advocating for years now. So you go back to school, back to the classrooms next Wednesday. For the ones that are actually in the classroom, what's that going to like? When you mention going to lunch or the simple thing of getting the bathroom pass, how are the very basic scenes going to change?
So luckily, with our current plan where students go 4 half days, that eliminates the lunch issue because they won't be staying at the school for lunch. If they do need lunch or they're on free and reduced lunch, and so we provide that for them, it'll be kind of a grab and go situation. So the morning students will grab their lunch on their way out, and the afternoon students will just grab their lunch on the way in, and they'll be able to eat that in the classroom. So we eliminated that fear that some students had in the spring about what lunch would look like. In terms of going to the bathroom and those kinds of things, the majority of our elementary buildings have bathrooms right in the classroom, so they won't have to leave and be mixed in with other kids. At our middle school, they are working on reducing the number of times that students are in the hallways altogether. Instead of the students traveling for each class period, the teachers will travel. And so they're developing a protocol for how to ensure that there aren't too many students out in the hallway or too many students in the bathroom. So there are all these little tiny logistical things that are going to look different that we have to think through. And kids are resilient and they will be able to learn them and they will be able to be successful even with those kind of differences in place.
Jianna, another thing that's interesting is the school district's formed a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee as well. Can you go into a little detail about what that committee is and what its focus areas are?
Yeah, so Sonia James, who is principal at Chico Elementary, and I are the co-facilitators of that committee. And it's actually not new. We've just recently renamed it because we wanted to broaden its reach. It has been in existence in West Bloomfield under a variety of names for probably 20 years. But this group is really charged with ensuring that we have equitable practices within our school district. In any way, shape, or form that might present itself. And so something that has happened with this group is that we often, we celebrate our diversity, and we have done a really good job with that. United We Walk, MLK 365, those have been staple celebrations in our community for a very long time. They happen in January. But sometimes when we get really busy, the actual work of diversity, equity, and inclusion is lost. Because we just get busy. And so in June, after the killing of George Floyd, our Board of Education passed a resolution on anti-racism, which really sets into motion that we have to change some policies because now it is board policy and they've charged us with that. And so we've been doing a lot of work over this summer, in addition to getting ready for school, to work on some of those systemic policies and barriers that some students have to being successful in our district. We're writing a district equity statement, so we pulled together stakeholders, parents, teachers, administrators, students to work on writing that. I'm sure you are aware, we had the Drive-In for Justice. I think you guys were broadcasting from that. We have had our Hurt to Healing web series. We had our second one last night, and that one was focused on getting your students ready for school in this kind of pandemic situation. And the earlier one was talking to your students about racism. And so we're trying to create systems so that we don't have these one-off kind of celebrations of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We want it to be ongoing in a number of ways. We are looking at our curricular materials to ensure that all students are reflected in them, that all students can see themselves. We're looking at our discipline policies, our attendance policies, because there are disparities in racial groups within those policies. We're looking at our school programming, particularly at the high school, to ensure that students are represented in our clubs and our extracurriculars. We're looking at staff PD. So some of the professional development that staff had to do this summer focused on anti-racist teaching practices and how they can bring that into their particular content. And we're also looking to have more advocacy and spotlighting just past United We Walk. So we've already started to accomplish those things this summer.
When going forward with the policies, when you put them in place, a lot of times people go back to their old habits. How do you make it a part of their hearts for long-term change?
So diversity, equity, and inclusion work is really personal work to start. Like, you have to really reflect on how you've been raised and your personal biases, because we all have them no matter who we are. And so you have to reflect on that first. But that only goes so far. At some point, you have to put in written policies that explicitly state how, like, changes that will need to be made. And we also need to keep it on the forefront of our minds, because right now is a crazy time, and it would be really easy to put that on the back burner. But this kind of work cuts across all of the other work that we're doing. We had to take into consideration equity concerns in our back to school planning. We had to ensure that we were going to be able to provide Chromebooks to every student, regardless of what they may or may not have at home, that we needed to ensure that we would provide them hotspots if they needed them. So that is what compelled us to purchase enough Chromebooks that kids would be able to leave a set at home or leave them at home, but also we would have enough to have them at school as well, so they wouldn't have to bring them back and forth. So keeping things on the forefront of our minds. Ron Bellamy, our head football coach, he is also a part of our DEI team, and he talks about like these everyday drills that he does with his players to ensure that a skill stays on their mind and stays at the forefront. And so we're starting to think about how we can do those everyday drills with anti-racist work with our teachers. So always just maybe a little reminder each day about how you can do a tweak to your practice to ensure that all students are successful.
You had mentioned the West Bloomfield School District is very diverse. Students from 60 different languages. Is it hard for you to get textbooks that do address and recognize so many different backgrounds? And if not, how do you compensate for that?
It is a challenge to get textbooks that reflect that, because a lot of textbook publishers will publish a version for California and Texas because those are their largest customers. And so the rest of the states just kind of have to go along with that. But especially if we're looking at the English curriculum, there are a lot of options there. There are so many young adult novels, short stories, poems written by authors of color, written by just all kinds of people. And we can bring those into our curriculum. Actually, our English teachers did a curriculum equity audit this summer. And it was really eye-opening for a lot of them to see that their curriculum did not have authors of color or diverse characters. So there are a lot of ways that we're starting to make changes, but there's definitely a lot of room for improvement.
navigating during a pandemic, just to add to your challenge already, right? Before we let you go, anything that we didn't touch on that you think our viewers and listeners need to know?
I don't think so. I really appreciate the time being able to talk about this.
Well, thank you for being on the Oakland County Megacast, and thank you and to your team over there at the West Bloomfield School District for everything that you are doing. I know that summer vacation has not been a vacation for all of you. Jianna Taylor, School Improvement Coordinator with the West Bloomfield School District. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back in just a moment on the Oakland County Megacast.
Hi, I'm Dr. Faust, the Medical Director for the Oakland County Health Division. The most important thing you can do to prevent the spread of illness is to wash your hands thoroughly and often. Follow these 6 easy steps every time you wash your hands. Step 1, turn on the sink and wet your hands with warm water. Step 2, apply soap to your hands and lather between your fingers, under your nails, and the front and back of your hands and wrists. Step 3, wash your hands by scrubbing them together for at least 20 seconds. Step 4, rinse your hands with warm, clean water. And step 5, dry your hands with a clean cloth towel, a paper towel, or hot air blow dryer. If you're using a cloth towel, make sure to change it often. For handheld faucets, turn off the water using a paper towel instead of your bare hand. Step 6, if you're using a paper towel, throw it away. Practice healthy habits like washing your hands after coughing or sneezing into them to keep you and others healthy. Go to oakgov.com/health or call Nurse on Call at 1-800-848-5533 to learn more.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test. And now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs. Even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary, we've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keith. We are coming to you live from our studios here in West Bloomfield. Each day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon. You can tune in to civiccentertv.com. You can watch us there, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, or you can listen to us on the radio if you're out driving around, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM, The Biff. Or if you can't tune in to us live each and every day during the week, you can also head over to civiccentertv.com, where we have done all the work for you. We are making everything easy for you to help you navigate this crisis. If you click on coronavirus, you will see there all the latest news headlines, but we also post web links to all of the sources that you need to get the latest information from the CDC, the state of Michigan, Oakland County, as well as our local municipalities. So important information over there, one click away on civiccentertv.com. Our last guest of the day, the pandemic has touched each and every person, each and every industry, including the chiropractic industry. Joining us on the Oakland County Megacast is going to be Dr. Richard Levine. As soon as I pull him up here, because as everyone knows, this is my first week trying to navigate the board. And so for those that have been joining us, I appreciate your patience, as I've been making a few technical errors, as I can't even speak today as well, because pushing buttons and having to talk and think at the same time when you're over 40 gets a little bit difficult, Tyler. You're going to find out one day. So, Dr. Richard Levine, thank you for being on the Oakland County Megacast. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us, what has this time been like for your business? What's changed, and how are you coming back from it?
It's definitely been an interesting last couple of months. When everything was starting to hit the Metro Detroit area pretty heavy in the tail end of March, we closed down our office. Now, being in healthcare, we could have stayed open, but we thought for our health, our employees' health, our patients' health, it would be in the best interest to close down. And since reopening in May, it's been very interesting. We're not operating as we normally would have. We're decreased staff. Obviously, our cleanliness, our disinfectant, everything we're doing to keep the office safe and secure and controlled is taking a lot more effort than we'd have been doing previously. But we're rolling. It's been interesting. But you drive down the road, you see a lot of for lease signs on businesses that were once profitable. So the fact that we're still open and thriving, we're blessed.
When you did finally get to reopen your doors, were you pretty busy because people were putting off coming to see you? Because usually if you go to a chiropractor, you go every week, every 2 weeks. There's a schedule.
Yep. So it's been very interesting. We had a lot of our regular patients, people we see weekly, biweekly, monthly, that hadn't seen us for a month and a half, 2 months. And then at the same time, you also saw a lot of people who working from home. Working from home comes with its own challenges. People are working without desks. They're working from bar stools. They're working on the couch. And then add the other element to it, which means people have their kids home from school. So, they're bending over, picking up toys, helping kids with their online homework. So posturally, working from home has not been great for the general public. So we're seeing a lot of spinal complaints as a result.
Are you seeing more kids come in as well?
Yeah, we're seeing, I would say in terms of the population we're seeing all ends of it. We're seeing seniors who, because they're stuck home and they're not able to go to the gym, they're not able to do the things they normally love, their spines are tight. They're not getting the activity they're used to. We're seeing kids who, they're used to be playing, they're used to going to their friends' houses. And now, during the school year, they were stuck at home doing this on a tablet, an iPad, on a laptop for so long to try to go to school. That spinal complaints that we normally saw in adolescents and adults, we're seeing in younger children as well.
So can you tell us, for all the people that are stuck at home and the students that are going to be right back where they were this past school year, what tips can you give to people that can't get out about their posture so that they don't end up having to come to you?
Well, ultimately, the best thing I would tell everybody is a lot of people took the quarantine. They thought that meant stay home, don't do anything. And while they were correct in that they should be staying home, they should be avoiding contact, avoiding crowded places, that doesn't mean there's no need to exercise. It doesn't mean there's no need to eat healthy. That doesn't mean there's no need to use good posture, to use good lifting habits. So the best thing I would say is get moving, go for a walk, exercise, stretch. Don't sit home and be a couch potato. And on that same note, I'd also say if you don't have a doctor of chiropractic, find one. If you do have a doctor of chiropractic, consult them on things that you can do at home. Postural patterns, occupational habits, things you can do to, even if you don't have a problem in the spine, ways you can prevent a problem.
When do you know it's just a pain in your back and when to actually come see you?
Well, ultimately, without a chiropractic evaluation, there's really no way to know. And the reason I say that, pain in the spine is natural. You help a friend move a couch. You go on a long road trip. You sleep in a hotel mattress, a pull-out bed. Pain in the spine is very natural. But what I would say is, just like our dentist, just because in my office, we use references and comparisons to the dental industry very often. And the reason is we brush our teeth every day. We don't wait till we have teeth decay to do it. We do it every day. We're supposed to floss regularly. We don't wait till we have gum issues. We use mouthwash daily. We don't wait till we have bacterial issues in the mouth. And the reason I use those examples is the spine's very similar. Just because we don't have pain doesn't mean that there's nothing going on beneath the surface. So the best way to keep the spine healthy is to see your doctor of chiropractic. And on that same note, just like we go to our dentist, we don't know there's a problem. We don't know there's something going on beneath the surface till we see our dentist. So on that note, a sore back, come see your doctor of chiropractic at Levine Clinic. I'm very fortunate. I'm the third generation of my family to be working at Levine Clinic. And since 1962, what we've been trying to stress and get our patients to understand is that the spine is very intricate, where the spine has two purposes. Obviously, for the sake of holding our body up, for locomotion, the spine is very important. But the spine is also the home to the nervous system. So if the spine is misaligned, if the spine is not working as it should be, the nervous system inside of it is going to be taking the brunt of that. It's going to be jeopardized. So just because we don't have pain doesn't mean there's nothing going on beneath the surface. So my recommendation for everybody at home, whether it be back pain, neck pain, or even no pain and wanting to just make sure that we don't have problems down the road, see your doctor, chiropractic, and have them do an evaluation, just like you would see your dentist every 6 months for a dental evaluation.
Dr. Richard Levine, doctor at Levine Clinic of Chiropractic with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Dr. Levine, over the course of the pandemic, many other doctors' offices and medical professionals have transitioned to telehealth or have added telehealth into their regular checkups with their patients. Has that occurred in your clinic of chiropractic, or is that something that's not entirely practical for the medicine you practice?
So you did hit a good point with us. It's not exactly practical as it is in other fields of healthcare. Now, with that said, we do telehealth visits. We do phone visits, Skype visits with our patients. But with that said, it's more so for existing patients if they want to go over home stretching or home therapies they could do. But our biggest thing that we've been trying to get through to our patients is, number one, all of our patients at Levine Clinic get their doctor's cell phone number. We want to make sure we're always available, always open. But in terms of telehealth, with chiropractic, you can't deliver an adjustment over the phone. Where other fields of medicine, they can renew a prescription, they can look at a rash. What we do does require in-person therapies, but we have found people, seniors that, for instance, we have seniors that are in senior homes or nursing homes that they're not allowed out because if they do, they have to be in quarantine in their room for 2 weeks when they come back. So we have been, making it work for other patients, doing home stretches, home therapies. But for the most part, we've not dug too far into the telehealth world.
Dr. Richard Levine from the Levine Clinic of Chiropractic on the Oakland County Megacast with us. I'm talking to you and I immediately start to sit up straighter. And as you mentioned, we're all home so much more now, and it's easy to forget about your posture. You're leaning over, you're working from not a standard desk. Maybe you're at the kitchen table, or for students on their beds, whatever. We've seen some of these devices hit the market where they buzz if you wear them to remind you to sit up straighter. Do those work? Should people invest in them?
You know what? I don't know too much about the ones that buzz, but what I can tell you is if they draw attention to the world of tech deck and postural abnormalities that we're seeing today, then they're a good device. And again, I don't know too much about it, but what I can tell you, something we always talk about to our patients is the ear, using the ear as a point of reference. And I don't want anybody that's watching this to take this as healthcare advice, without seeking the opinion of their medical doctor or their doctor of chiropractic. However, what I will say is I'm going to turn to the side to demonstrate. You'll notice here that my ear is on top of my shoulder. Now my ear is hung in front of my shoulder. And recent studies have shown that for every inch that the head hangs in a forward posture, that puts an additional 10 to 12 pounds of weight on the spinal column. So if a child, if an adolescent, and if an adult who's working from home is allowing their head to hang 2, 3, 4, 5 inches in front of their shoulders like this, that's the potential for an extra 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds of weight that you're putting on the spine. So there are things that you can be doing at home. You can be sitting with lumbar support. You can be making sure that you're holding the head up. But ultimately, like what you asked about that device, if it draws attention to the postural issue we're seeing in a society, then it's a great thing. Something we've been seeing in our office for quite some time is the degenerative patterns that we see in adults in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. We're starting to see in college students and high school students, because today's high school students, they've been using technology in the classroom since they were in kindergarten, which means that the adult, they're generally not, starting to have those issues till they're in the workforce, sitting on computers, writing, driving. But kids, now that from the time that they're 5, 6 years old, they've got an iPad in the classroom, they're looking down at their desk like this all day instead of up at the teacher in front of them. I have a feeling that our society is going to start to see a long-term issue with this unless we start to stress the importance of spinal health and postural health to our kids.
So if I'm a parent sitting at home, a light bulb, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. A light bulb is going off in my head as an adult. But if I'm a parent and my kids, I'm looking at my kids and you're describing what they're doing, is there something I can do now? And how young are they to be before they start seeing a chiropractor?
Well, we see children in our office as soon as newborns, and we have patients that are over 100 years old. Obviously, a 300-pound bodybuilder and a newborn are not going to be adjusted the same. We use a much lighter force on children, but we see a lot of kids in our office, and they benefit greatly from chiropractic. There's a lot of research behind it showing the importance and the safety of chiropractic for children. And then to answer your question about what a parent can do, is, the best thing we always tell patients in our office is if you're using a laptop, put a couple books underneath it. That way, instead of it being this high and having to look down to see it, now it's a little bit higher. It's been brought higher to our eye level. Other things that we talk to parents about is if a child is using an iPad or a tablet, not to ever lay it flat on the table. To always make sure that it's up on an angle, so that way we're looking like this instead of like this. Ultimately, it's positioning. And what we always recommend for people who are working at home and kids who are going to school at home virtually is to try to have as normal of a work setting as possible. And I say that in the sense of don't work on a couch looking down with the iPad on your thighs. Don't work on a bar stool, trying to hold your computer in one hand and look. Try to have as normal as a desk positioning as you can. A good flat surface with a good, comfortable, and supportive chair behind you. And also making sure that the chair has a back. Oftentimes kids, like to work on the ground, which means that they're slouching. We want to make sure that our kids are sitting up, that our adults are sitting up, so that way our spinal health isn't jeopardized.
So many great tips and great information. Before we let you go, Dr. Richard Levine, anything you want to add for our listeners and our viewers?
Well, I just want to thank you guys for having me on. The past week, I've been keeping tabs on what you guys are doing, and it's really great to have something not only in the West Bloomfield area, but countywide. Something local, hearing from our local businesses, and especially with what's going on in this pandemic, shining some spotlight on the local businesses. But what I can, something we talk about in our office, and I want this to be my last words, are don't wait for your spinal health. Don't wait for pain to pay attention to your spinal health. The same way we take care of our feet, our teeth, our hands, our face, we should put that same effort into our spine, because where we have options for other areas in the spine, in the body, we've only got one spine. So I want to make sure that everybody in Oakland County is taking care of it and not having problems down the road. At Levine Clinic, nothing makes us happier than seeing families that know the importance of spinal health. And again, I just want to thank you guys for having me on, and again, tell you what a wonderful job you guys are doing.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that, and we appreciate having you on. So that's Dr. Richard Levine Clinic of Chiropractic. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll wrap things up here on the Oakland County Megacast.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards, back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart. Keep wearing a mask in public. And if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus.
This is the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keith. And you can listen and catch us on civiccentertv.com Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. You can listen or watch us Birmingham Area Municipal Access. But if you're out driving around, Tyler, I did catch the replay on the radio the other day, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM, The Biff. And if you are at home and you do have cable, channel 15 on Comcast, channel 99 on AT&T. You can also click on the internet just one click away, and that is civiccentertv.com, where each and every day we do go ahead and we update all the latest headlines, as well as provide you with links to valuable resources throughout the Oakland County area as well as the state of Michigan. You can get the CDC resources, the state of Michigan, Oakland County. Just go ahead and click on those links right there, and you can get all the information that you need on civiccentertv.com. Also, if you were not able to catch all of today's broadcast, you can also go to civiccentertv.com, where a little bit later today we will put clips from the interview up on the website so that you can watch those as well. So each and every day we try to get out on noon, but I'm pulling up my phone here and the internet, it gets a little crazy in the studio here. But for Tyler Keefe, I'm Ronnie Dahl. For all of us here at Civic Center TV, we appreciate you tuning in to the Oakland County Megacast.